All right, we'll go ahead and call the Capital Funding Protection Committee meeting for February 1st, 2024 to order. I'd like to go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Paul Anderson,
Here.
Clara Andriola, Elise Bunkowski,
Here.
Charlene Bybee,
Here.
Chris Cobb, Andrew Diss, Jeannie Herman, Justin Ivory, Miguel Martinez,
Here.
Devon Reese,
Here.
Dave Solero.
Here. All right, we've got a quorum, so that'll take us on to item 2.01, which is approval of the minutes for the December 7th, 2023 meeting of the Capital Funding Protection Committee. I've got a motion by Reese, second by Ivory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. That'll take us on to item 2.02, which is a presentation and discussion of the proposed budget for the construction phase of Otis Vaughn Middle School and the reconstruction project for $125 million.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Teresa Polson, the Director of Planning and Design for the school district. And I brought with me today Tony McMillan, who is our Director of Construction. So he can talk about the finer details of the construction phase for the project. So again, just a little history on this project. Vaughn was selected to be our first school to receive a full reconstruction as a direct result of our Cannon facility master plan recommendations that was completed this last couple months. We were approved to start design on this project last December 2022. Therefore, we started design in January of 23. We retained TSK Architects to complete the design of the project, and Clark and Sullivan we retained as the CMAR for the project as well. We then completed design just this last month, December of 2023. Next slide, please. This is just showing the general layout of the school and the phasing for the school. GMP1, or our phase 1, will consist of constructing the new school, and it will be on the Vassar and Yorrie side of the site. Yorrie will be where the new entrance to the school is, and then phase 2 will be the construction of the new sports fields, with demolition, of course, of the old building first. Phase 1 is anticipated to start this June 2024 through 2026, and then the construction of the field shortly thereafter, June 26 through spring of 27. Just a couple changes and improvements that I wanted to highlight between O'Brien and Vaughn. The main highlight really is the increase of the square footage. We're increasing square footage by about 13,000 square feet. The main reason for that is because we had to sort of rearrange the building blocks, if you will, of the O'Brien prototype design. And in order to do that, we had to add some additional circulation corridors. We also widened some of the main corridors in the school as well. A few other things that are unique is that we are doing a solar array at Vaughn versus a geothermal field, really due to the size of the site. We are not able to do a geothermal at that site, so we are including solar. We're including 2 shade structures, some interior wall protection on some main corridors in those hallways, interior wayfinding. We are also doing some more significant off-site improvements probably at this site than we did at O'Brien. And we are relocating a cell tower that sits in the middle of our site that we need to relocate. So our construction phase estimate for this project is a total of $125 million. You can see the breakdown here on the right-hand side. Construction is currently at $109.6. The cell tower relocation is an estimate at this time, but we're estimating that at a couple $100,000. Professional services at $5.2 million and FF&E at $6.6. This all equates to about $514 per square foot. And I'll hand it off to Tony to talk about the professional services.
Thank you, Teresa. Tony McMillan, Capital Projects. Going through the budget, large portion, I think it's been questioned by Mr. Ivory. Can we break out the professional services and have a little bit more description associated? That's what we did here. Some of these items, when you look, hazardous material consultants, the bulk of hazardous material will be in phase 2 of the project when we demo the main building, but phase 1 still has a small demolition as well as some cell tower work and things that we have to address. So that's why you see a smaller amount here in phase 1. Then we have owner representative and in-house staff and salaries. The owner representative is considered a third-party consultant representative, and it's to complement and pick up or supplement existing district staff. With the multitude of capital projects that we encounter on a regular basis, there are things that we can't take care of, and we need third-party help to do that. So that's the owner's representative and the in-house representative. Then the special inspections and testing is regulatory requirements, as well as commissioning is a state law requirement. There's obviously value to both of those long-term for the district, but those are included in professional services. We also provide a detailed roofing inspection with Benchmark Services. I think it's Benchmark LLC, not 100% on that. But they are roofing experts. They do both design, inspection, and roof surveys locally for many agencies and many private companies. We've utilized Benchmark for many years to do these services, but the details of keeping a roof safe and dry is very complicated, and they're experts at it. So we utilize their services. And then the last piece that goes along with professional services and we budget are the building permits and utility fees and connections.
You guys mind if we jump in with questions?
No.
Go for it.
Okay.
So can you elaborate on the owner representative? I understand it gives description of what the job description is. $1.9 million, is that for one person?
That's not one person. An owner
I can
representative.
say, because I need a new job if it is.
No, owner representative is, it's full-time on-site inspection, quality review services. It's detailed schedule review, monthly basis. It is higher level project management type staff that would also possibly review invoicing, review financials for a project, tracking budgets. It is also, there's a principal liaison, which helps us as capital projects and the district work with the existing school and the existing principal, because they have a full-time job being a principal. However, we have needs on a construction site, whether it's FF&E or how would the site like this, or how does this work with an audio program or something like that with the school. This is a liaison that helps us get into the school and work closely with them and vice versa when we need things.
So it's a number of different people, and these are all salaries for those people? It's
They-
not benefits too, because this is not full-time, this is third-party?
It's a professional contract.
Professional
that is
services.
billed- Yes, it is.
Okay.
Our consultant contracts for construction professional services are done on a time and material with a not to exceed.
Okay, and that's
So-
for the duration of the project?
It's for the duration of the
Okay,
project. Yes.
thank you. That number just kind of threw me. Thank you, I
Understand.
appreciate it.
Okay, so how long is the project that this is gonna cover for the construction manager?
About 19 months.
19 months? And I understand it gets paid out on a time and material not to exceed. Is that how we determine who we pick, is based on the rate per hour? Or how do we determine who we choose, which company we choose for this contract? Because this is a pretty good-sized contract.
This is a pretty good sized contract. This is a professional civil engineering service. By state law, the construction management portion of engineering is through the civil division there. So then it falls to a existing RFQ on-call list for engineering and CM services that we have and go through that process with our purchasing department. And then a contract for professional services is a negotiated fee contract.
Okay, and then you had mentioned also that, that this person, there's somebody on site daily, right? So that's part of
Yes.
the team. There's also backup office staff. You mentioned that this person or this company also does inspections.
They do a quality assurance inspection, essentially an assistance to the contractor as well as the owner to assure that the project requirements in detail are being followed and put in place.
Okay, and then they also oversee all the schedule. So we pay for another company to produce the schedule, which is a high-level schedule. It kind of shows you all your spots that you got to hit. Like on a certain day, all these things need to be done in order to be staying on schedule. So these guys also oversee and monitor that schedule. Is that
They do track the schedule. We have a very robust requirement of schedule for construction. It's very detailed.
and that's outsourced as well, correct? The schedule.
Yes, that would be part of this company, that they do a monthly schedule review as submitted and required for
So
pre-application.
who actually writes the schedule? Is it the GC then
The
that writes the schedule?
contractor, the general contractor submits the overall detailed schedule for review.
Gotcha. And who's on the hook for it if the project doesn't come in on time?
The contractor's on the hook for not coming in on time.
Okay, and then so if we have a construction manager that's overseeing the schedule, what liability do they hold if it doesn't come in on time? Since they're also overseeing and they have, and
The
they,
construction manager or the owner's representative?
well, I'm sorry, are they different? So I'm not talking about construction manager at risk. I'm talking about the terminology we've been using up until now.
Right.
Is we hire a construction manager, which is my understanding is the owner's representative. Is that correct?
Yes,
They're the same person.
they're the same person.
So what I'm asking is, they oversee the schedule, they oversee day-to-day inspections, they oversee all that stuff. So what I'm saying is, if they miss something, if it doesn't come through on time, where is their liability in the game? Are they a part of, do they carry general liability insurance? Do they carry, are they bonded? What is the aspect of, because otherwise all they are really is just somebody that's just taking notes, right?
Much like any other submittal, whether it's steel, whether it's shop drawings and that, construction schedule is a submittal, and it is a tool used by the entire project team to assure you're going to hit the targets of completion. So what the owner's representative, CM, when they review that schedule, they're reviewing that submittal much like anything else, that it's meeting the details of the spec, that it's meeting the original schedule, that it's tracking on time to provide the assurance for the general contractor and the owner as our representative that the project's going to be completed. It is still the general contractor's responsibility to complete a project on time, regardless of what the schedule is.
So I guess my question would be, if it falls back to the general contractor to be the responsible party in why are we paying somebody else to oversee something that they have no control over and no skin in the game in? They have no responsibility for. They're basically just they're like a paid watchdog. I'm trying to figure this out because this is a lot of money on every project that we're spending. And it seems to me like, especially when we're hiring a construction manager at risk company that we're teaming up with as a general contractor. They're the ones that, you know, if something doesn't get built right, something gets put in a wall and there's a hole in the plumbing of it and stuff, whether this inspector or this owner's rep saw it or not, if when they put water in the pipes and it leaks and ruins the drywall, the general contractor comes in and makes sure it gets fixed. The owner's rep doesn't, right?
Correct.
The owner's rep like I say, he just sits there and points stuff out. We're paying somebody $1.9 million to basically point stuff out. I mean, at the best I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, but is he anything more than like a court reporter?
I would say yes, he is. He's a construction expert. He is somebody to assist and assure the project is done correctly the first time so that we are not impacting the sites, we're not impacting the schools. He is a supplement to our staff. If we cannot perform that service that we do to assure our contracts are being followed and completed, that's what this representative does. The schedule portion of that is very minor. The schedule review, it's as much as any other submittal review. They're done on a monthly basis, but it is a minor amount of time in that contract.
Okay. I don't want to sit here and belabor this to death here, but I think it's my personal opinion that, like, I'm not hearing, you know, as a contractor, I'm not hearing any general contractors or subcontractors that are coming to me and saying, these guys bring value to the project. Now, at times, they're maybe not seeing eye to eye, right? Because this is the owner's rep versus the contractor. But all I'm saying is, even if the owner's rep is coming in and seeing something or mentioning something, I just have a tough time putting a value of $1.9 million to that one thing that they caught. That when we already have a contractor that's got to come back and fix it anyway. If it doesn't get built on time, we go back to the contractor. We hit him with liquidated damages. All that stuff is already covered. This is just like one extra layer of bureaucracy on top of it, right? Whereas, let me ask you this: if we didn't have a CM on this project, how many people would you put on that job full time, on the job to run it, like we did Wild Creek?
If it was in-house in my staff?
Yep,
4.
4. 4 people over 19 months, we're going to pay them $1.9 million.
I don't know the
Doesn't it seem-
I don't know the comparison of salary and benefits compared to private company. I would have to get that information for you.
Well, it seems to me like, it feels like to me, I know we talked about this in the past, but we know we've got this stream of money. We know we're going to build all this stuff. It seems like now is the time to ramp up your staff so that we have people that are responsible, that know the system,
I don't disagree with you, Mr. Ivory, that, and I will share, I spent 14 months hiring one inspector in a vacant position, and I just got another vacant position recently that's going out for advertisement, and I personally would not disagree with you that if I have adequate staff, we would do it all in-house, absolutely, and we'll make every effort to do that, and I feel like we do. But trying to keep up and keep these projects and the risk management, that's what construction management is, owner's representation. We are risk management for the project to assure, complete on time, get schools open when they're intended to be open, and not have impacts after they are open. And so that's a big piece of those assurances.
And I would agree with you if the owner's rep had any skin in the game. But if it doesn't open on time, nobody goes back to the owner's rep and says, where is your compensation back to the owner that you didn't do your job? That's not there. There's nothing in here in that $1.9 million. You go back to the general contractor, and the general contractor has to pay the liquidated damages, has to get the job finished up, has to do all that stuff, right? They're the ones on the hook for it. What I'm saying is, I feel like this is just 1.9 million. I'm not saying that you're able to eliminate all of this. I'm just saying for what we're paying for and what we're getting as an assurance, I just feel like we're overstaffing the heck out of it with a CM compared to what we would be doing in-house, is what I'm getting at. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Might be helpful if we had the scope of work too. I mean, if you've got a professional service contract, you obviously know what the scope of work is. So maybe at the, future meeting, you can provide us with the scope of
A
work.
typical scope of
Yep.
work for the various people? I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that would help
Sure.
us understand a little bit more exactly the work that's being done and the reasons why we do QA, QC on these,
Mm-hmm.
on these projects.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you. Any other questions? Cost comparisons, this is a little bit more into the 2 slides previous, I believe, that Teresa had. One point of note, and it does somewhat stand out when you look at professional services at O'Brien versus Vaughn. However, Vaughn is a budget request in comparison to O'Brien is an actual cost. That actual cost also comes from a budget JL, and I'm not confident that it includes everything inclusive of O'Brien, because sometimes salaries and different things get moved to other budgets, older funding, kind of through the business office. So I just wanted to say that O'Brien number is low in comparison to Vaughn for those reasons. And then the overall schedule, as Teresa touched on, we are in the middle of permitting the project and getting ready to advertise to bid. And construction is scheduled to start June of 2024. And school is scheduled to open in the new building in August of 26. The construction will be done, demolition, and that of the existing building will start in June of 26 and then move through 27. A little more on the next steps, as you see here, and I think what we talked about with the schedule. And any other questions for Teresa?
Are there any questions on this item?
Just a clarification, please. So going back to the project length, you said 19 months. Is that phase 1 or the complete project?
Phase 1.
Just phase 1. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
can I just ask, the bidding has gone out for the guaranteed maximum price contract, or it's about to go out?
It's about to go out, as
Okay.
soon as we get approval from, of course, you guys and then the board.
School board.
Yep.
And so that will include the requests related to the owner's representative as part of the bid packages. And who has been bidding on these projects historically? I mean, what would we expect? A competitive bidding process of 2 or 3 folks? Is it 10? How many people are bidding on these, generally speaking?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question? So you were asking about the professional services contracts?
Well, it was
Or-
broken out as professional services
Yes.
because one of our members had asked for that last time, and I appreciate the due diligence in putting that forward.
Yes.
But it is, the entirety of the package is the entirety of the bottom line at the end of it. It includes all of those things. So it's one package, correct?
At contract bidding?
Yes.
Okay, so no, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
so-
misunderstood. So the contract bidding will be just for the construction of the project. The professional services and all the other services that you see there will be separate contracts with different consultants. That will come after the award of the construction contract.
Okay, so I would expect to see at some point in time, we would have one for construction services.
Yes.
Has that been bid out yet?
No,
It's about to go out.
yes.
Okay, and then there would be a second one, which would just be the professional services contract.
Yes, and those will be contracts that just come directly to the board for approval.
And Mr. Ivory has raised some specific and legitimate concerns about how that's broken down and what the work scope is. So let's focus not on the construction side of it, because I can imagine who might bid on that. There are a limited number of folks who do it. We've got some great folks in the valley. They've built other schools for us, no problem. What about on the professional services contract? Have we gone out for bid on that kind of a contract before?
Do you want to take that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Reese, that is a professional engineering contract. It is selected on a qualification-based and negotiated contract.
So it is not bid competitively?
It is not bid competitively,
Okay.
no.
Have we done this before?
Yes.
Who in the past has applied to be part of that? Do we have someone for the projects we've just finished, for example?
We have an existing RFQ CM on-call list, you might call it, and there are, I want to say, 6 valid consultants that are on that list.
So again, we have qualified people who you have to choose from on some kind of a list, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I am not as shocked by the price tag that you've attached to it in the budget, in part because I understand the size of the project dictates partly the size of the request. When you're dealing with a, $120 or $121 million total rebuild on a school, $2 million in that other line item is not that large or garish to me, but we want to make sure we understand it. So without being able to understand what you are looking at, the scope of work, that's why it's alarming, right? On a project for 19 months in length, for the number of people you're talking about, I do not find that to be shocking in terms of the cost, but it's hard to judge it in an isolation or in a vacuum, right? So Mr. Ivory raises legitimate concerns that I think need answers before we're able to really evaluate it. But again, I have a high degree of trust in your team. I have a degree of trust in the work that you have historically done, and that's why I asked you what you had done and previously experienced. Because I'm guessing if we went back and looked at those contracts, the terms would not be particularly inflated. Maybe inflation has taken its toll as it has in other areas, but we would probably find out that breaking it out in this way reveals that we've done it that way in the past, and we've gotten value for the services. Right? I want to make sure that people who are doing this work understand we value the work they do, even though it seems a high number, right? We all sit in different kinds of enterprise in our own professional and private lives. We have different bodies that we represent, and so different experiences. If we are able to see all the connections through the dots that you get to see, then perhaps we wouldn't be so skeptical of the high number that is presented by the report. That makes sense? The other thing I will say is that knowing some historical data would be helpful to evaluate it, because if there is a huge divergence between what we've historically paid for similar services and what we are asking to be proposed to be paid now, it would help us to evaluate whether or not they're reasonable in light of the continuing change in economic conditions, or in, as you said, you had problem filling a position for some number of months. That also is relevant to the calculation. So again, there's a few more holes to fill. I don't doubt the need is there, but I want to make sure that we are being the best stewards we can of the resources. And it's not for your want of trying or the effort that you put into it. We just have some additional questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ivory.
Okay, just to circle back, because he brought up a couple of great questions here that I just thought of as he was speaking. When did we start roughly using CMs?
2005.
2005.
Actually, probably a little bit before that as well, but that was before my time.
Okay. And I don't know if you'll know this or not, but prior to using them, how many schools did our contractors that we selected, did they not finish on time?
I can't answer that right now.
When you circle back with the other stuff, I'm just curious, I mean, have we run into this in the past before we started hiring CMs? Did we run into this where because we didn't have enough representation by the owners? I'm curious as to what the historical pitfalls may have been that we ran into because we weren't using CMs on site, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So any historical knowledge on that would be awesome. And then the only other question I had was you said that this is billed out on a T&M not to exceed.
Time and material
Yep.
not to exceed.
Yep, so when I do a T&M for an owner or for a general contractor, I'm usually required to provide a breakout on material costs, on my markups, on my labor rates, on all that. Is that what we get from these
Yes.
companies?
Yes, we have a dollar professional, professional engineer, billable hour. They're anywhere from 185 to 220-ish for professional engineering now. They do escalate like everything every year, typically around 5% is what I've seen. But there's all various levels that are in those contracts. And yes, they're billed in detail. I keep a detailed spreadsheet of what our contract price is and then what is their build price so that we know, are they tracking over services or under services? Because we certainly don't want to look for more money for our CM, and we want to be efficient and effective with what we do.
Okay, and I'm sure Dave would agree that 185 to 200 is probably low.
Well,
I'm-
Dave's
I'm
might be
just-
worth a little more than me, I guess, so I don't know.
But I don't think that's, I don't think anybody here thinks that's an unreasonable amount to pay for basically a civil engineer, right? That's what we're.
Right.
Right? So what about the person that writes the reports for the civil, the assistant? Do we get billed on a rate for like the assistant?
Yes, yes.
Is that like at $45 an hour,
They're
$55 an hour?
105 maybe.
For the
80,
assistant.
85, yeah, I have to go look. I don't want to say.
Once again, I don't want to pin you down here because.
Yeah.
But yeah, if when you bring that if you could bring us kind of the rates that we're paying so that we can see.
Yeah, all of our professional contracts have a rate service, a rate sheet for additional services and those things, or what are their billable rates and that are
That'd be awesome,
included.
so, and then that's all I had, so, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item 2.03, presentation and discussion.
We have public comment on this item.
So that's an informational item, so we'll only do public comment on the action items, and then, yep. So 2.03, presentation to discussion on the request for budget allocation of the George Ghetto Central Transportation Yard improvements, Phase 1 and 2, for $45.5 million. Ms. Polson?
Yeah, it's not as much as the last one, so should be piece of cake, right? Thank you very much, Teresa Polson, Director of Design and Planning. So again, just a little bit of history on this project. We had a master plan study done a few years back in 2020, to evaluate all of our transportation projects, and the central transportation site was selected for full reconstruction. And really the main reason for it was the amount of flooding that continues to happen at that site. This building was built in 1974. It's got underground fuel tanks and issues with parking and security. So those really are just the main reasons that we have decided to move forward with design. So we did start design in December of 2022. We hired Collaborative Design architects to do the design for this building, and this will be a hard bid project. We did design a building that is about 35,000 square feet for approximately 192 staff. The building will combine all of the offices and shop space for both what we call our white fleet and our yellow fleet. Currently, there are separate buildings, but they'll include a new hoist crane in the shops with new lifts, a new wash bay, and new above-ground fueling tanks with increased capacity. So I'll hand the rest off to Tony to talk about the project.
All right. Tony McMillan, this, I believe you guys have seen this plan before. We're flying through, aren't we?
Thank you.
Are my pages correct?
There we go.
We've seen this plan before. Phase 1 is an existing upper portion of the parking lot where you have a number of bus parking and you have some admin offices and our white fleet, the building there on the right-hand side surrounded in red. That's where the new facility is being built, so that's what we're calling phase 1 and 2, or it would be bid number 1. And then bid number 2, or phase 3 on the plan, is the demolition of existing facility and reconstructing bus parking lot in that location. A little more detail from the previous slide. This is the actual plan with the new building, new fuel islands, wash bay, and the phase 3 demo area parking lot. I believe there was a question at the last meeting regarding electrical vehicle charging. Right now, we are looking into putting the infrastructure in for full electrical vehicle charging. It would all be part of phase 3, so we've got some time to do that research and what makes sense and not make sense and for those capabilities. It would take a lot of power, and so it's going to take some time to work with the power company to figure out where do their services come from and what that might cost as well. So just wanted to point that out, I believe. Our funding request for, is this phase 1 and 2? I'm sorry. Phase 1 and 2?
1 and 2, bid number 1.
Bid number 1. I'm confusing myself. I'm sorry. Bid number 1, construction estimate, $40 million. Professional services, $4 million, and furniture and equipment at $1.5 million. I will say on this slide, the furniture and equipment, we have gone through some various detailed lists and working on this budget, trying to utilize what is the condition of existing equipment, because fleet maintenance and that, it comes with some very expensive and different types of equipment. We are trying to work through what is the age of some of that equipment, what can be reused, what is really obsolete and really needs to be replaced. So we are working through those details, but we feel like we have a decent estimate and a decent handle on what needs to move and what really just needs to go to auction and be replaced. Moving on to the next page, same breakdown as previous project. I will say on this project for transportation, we have, while we are asking for this budget and for owner representation, we are reviewing existing staff and feel like we have some bandwidth capability with existing staff to move maybe not all of the owner representation, but a good piece of the owner representation under the owner category, which certainly will save money. And so this is the project where we were trying to do that, and we're also trying to look at future facility master plan projects and how that works into our project staff, really with capital renewal and some of these other projects. So I just wanted to point that out, that we do that analysis, and we are making efforts to understand and try to reduce as well as grow our staff, both existing staff and their capabilities. We have some young staff and some new staff, and there's things they need to learn, and some projects really lend themselves to that, and this project of transportation is one of those. And then the schedule for transportation. Design's complete. We are working on the permitting process and being ready to bid the project. It would start construction in June 2024. And bid number 1, phase 1 and 2, we are looking to complete in the mid to late spring timeframe to be able to demo existing building and get parking lot built. There is some logistics with the number of buses that are on site and where do we house those. We right now do not have a place to house those buses unless it's in the summer. So we're trying to hit those targets to be able to rebuild the parking lot in the summer where we have other facilities to move buses to. So that's a little bit of a schedule driver. And then we're also trying to time this schedule related to Vaughn as well, so that we're not trying to bid two major projects at the same time. So Vaughn will be first and transportation will be second when it comes to bidding. And next steps after approvals, bid, construction, and phase 3, we will be looking for funding, I want to say, in the fall of 25 and bidding to start work in spring 26. Any questions?
Any questions on this one?
Not a question, actually, it's a comment, and I want to say that I appreciate you considering, especially with the heartburn that it's causing all of us with the high number for your professional fees, but having staff work on this, and I would imagine some offices and a shop and a wash bay are probably an easier project to have lesser experienced staff and less time for staff to be able to utilize them in-house versus something like a school. And I am not in the construction trade, but I would think that those are pretty significant differences between the type of projects that you're doing. So I just want to say thank you for considering that. And so then that 2 million that you have right now would be a not to exceed amount. Hopefully staff utilization would drop that down considerably. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's strictly an estimate with historical information that we prepared for a budget request.
Okay, thank you.
Any idea how we deal with that logistically if, say, we augmented it with some of our staff? Professional services has a T&M not to exceed. What happens at the end of the day if the amount of money we put into it on ourselves and the amount of money they put into it equals more than the budget amount? Is that a possibility to happen, or?
I don't believe that would be a possibility,
Okay.
because we wouldn't, to help with that, the thinking is if we take 100% of the inspection staff, then they have no inspection staff. They may still need to do schedule review, which is a minor portion, right? So that's how we look at it. It's not fair to have part-time inspector. That can get really difficult on who's doing what, and it lends itself to a potential of a lot of overlap, and we don't want that overlap of services, whatever they are, because then there's waste.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item 2.04, which is a presentation and discussion of the proposed budgets for the design phases of various projects as recommended by the 2023 Facility Modernization Plan. Mrs. Zimmerman.
Thank you, Chair Solero. For the record, Tammy Zimmerman, Chief Facilities Management Officer. You heard earlier our Vaughn School presentation and project that's going. That's our first out-of-the-gate facility modernization plan, but these are our next ones, which is really important to us to actually work through that plan that Canon Design presented and approved. You guys approved it in December. The board approved it in December as well. And we take that plan very seriously. I want to emphasize it is a plan, and we'll work through it with our staff. But we wanted to hit the ground running as we promised. Next slide. So this is the overall schedule. It's really tiny, but it shows a lot. It's got 3 phases in it. And here today, we're going to start with phase 1. Next slide. So it is a 15-year plan. The beginning this year, these are the projects highlighted, surrounded in blue and big, bold text. Stead Elementary, Loader. Next slide. Reed High School modernization, Worcester High School rebuild on site, conceptual study, Matthews and Palmer Elementary School modernizations. Next slide. So we chose these, they're in there for the first year, right? It is a plan, but we chose these specific schools because they're a little bit more shovel-ready than some of the other ones that you might see in the schedule. So we'll go on to Stead Elementary School, which is proposed as a rebuild for Stead Elementary. Next slide. So Stead, I'm going to kind of orient you. Stead, the existing Stead is on kind of a sister campus to O'Brien. It's on Stead Boulevard, busy, busy street. We have procured previously through land acquisitions, the Silver Dollar property that you see with the blue highlight or blue star on that, which is in the neighborhood, which is really where elementary schools should be. We were proactive in this endeavor when that development came up. And so we're proposing to rebuild Stead on that campus. Next slide. So we're talking about design phase funding for this project. I wanted to show you what we've spent in full design for these schools. This school, some of these schools, they were pad ready by the developers and those kind of things. So there's a little bit of difference in those actual design funds that we had spent in those and the allocation for them. Next slide. So this is some schematic designs, right? We purchased the property, but we didn't wait. We actually started doing some conceptuals so that we could hit the ground running with an actual shovel-ready Stead Elementary School or a school in that neighborhood. H&K Architects is the prototype architect for this. You can see up at the top, we have a budget that was put into the Canon design just to get that through the plan. We're going to replicate the current prototype elementary, as I had talked previously. The design request is for $3.5 million, which is a little bit more than previous ones, but we're actually anticipating possibly adding additional classrooms onto this based off of the nature of what Stead Elementary has for classrooms, what their needs are, their special programs, so that we can actually take that and move it over there and have a little bit of breathing room for them, which is, we typically like to run at about 85% capacity of our schools so that they can have lunchrooms that aren't fully stocked with students, they can have libraries, and they're not moving things into classrooms that shouldn't be into those classrooms. So the design services are not just for architects and their consultants to do that. It has a myriad of other items on there, plan review fees, commissionings, so that they look at the building envelopes for our plans to make sure they're as efficient as possible. Roof consultants. We're not experts in roofs. We have a consultant that does a very good job for us in reviewing the roofs for us. Utility connections, we need to know what those are. Get those plans in place if NV Energy has items that need to be designed in that. Geotechnical investigations and traffic analysis. So it's not just an architect. There are some things that we would be actually procuring and contracting ourselves.
Quick question. What will you be doing with the old Stead Elementary? Repurpose, knocking it down? Do we know?
We don't, at this time, there's no definitive plans for it. There have been discussions, but that will go through a process through our executive leadership team and our superintendent as to what the community needs. And then in the facility modernization, there are dollars, if it's to be repurposed, to actually invest in that to fix it up for what it needs to be. There are many things that the community needs. Is it a pre-K center? Is it a newcomer center? Those kind of things. Is there something that the city needs and we can still own the property while allowing the city to use that property for something? There are a lot of options. It'll go through a process through the school closure process that we have in the district. So it may close as a school, but it may open as something else.
How old is the school?
It was built in the mid-50s, so it's pretty old.
I'm glad you said that, not me. And then just real back to the budget allocation. So when you're talking about like the 2.8 million, the 2.1 million, that's the architect, the engineer, or I should say the different engineers, right? That basically gives you the entire design, civil, all that stuff. That's all included in that project.
Correct. That's included under the schematic design, the design development, construction documents, construction CA. There are additional engineers for traffic analysis and geotechnical that we procure as well.
And historically, do these numbers kind of fall in line? Because as opposed to construction manager, I feel like with the architect and the design team, these numbers should kind of fall in line with almost a percentage of the overall budget of the project.
Correct. And that's how we come to this 3.5 million, is based off of percentage of what that construction would be for that school. So we use a percentage, which is pretty typical of these type of projects for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
With this one, oh, sorry.
Ms. Zimmerman, thank you for the presentation. It's always a privilege to sit with you because your knowledge is so extensive and your joy is infectious, so thank you for that. I wanted to ask really about a comment that my friend from Sparks, Councilmember Bybee, said about repurposing it, and then you got into a discussion about potentially that is the future life of this building. So the North Valley's residents, I think, have long sought a home for a senior center, a community building, something in that nature. So from my perspective, I want to make an early play for it at the City of Reno. I know that part of the discussions will go on that will have deep impacts in this community, and this school has been a site for really community engagement at a very early level for kids, but it's also a place where scouting troops meet and different kinds of band groups have met over the years. And so from my perspective, given its location and that it does probably still have useful life to it, perhaps just not in the way that we see our schools trending towards, it would be a great home for some kind of a community. It might end up being a food bank. It could be a CIS site. Communities and schools do a great deal of things in our community. So I hope that what the community hears when they think about the repurposing of any school is that they understand it's still to be used in the service of the community. Like, we're not going to flatten it and turn it into a mega mart or something like that. And so I've already sent an email to the district now saying that the City of Reno is very interested, and it would be a great long-term asset for the North Valley's community. So let's have those discussions and keep the lines of communication open.
Thank you. So this will be a hard bid delivery method. We've built this prototype before. There's no need for a CMAR on this project. It's an empty campus for us. The next steps, we are anticipating coming back to this committee for funding approval for construction in August of 2024, so that we can then open an anticipated opening date of August 2026 with that.
Tammy, can you tell us the capacity at the old STED campus and the new capacity plans?
So currently at the existing STED, there are approximately 700 students there. And that looks to kind of trend. They have a lot of special programs there that they may only have 10 to 12 students in each classroom based off of their class size needs. So the new school would fit that. We are also looking at the projections and what special programs may need to be moved into that. So that's what precipitates maybe additional classrooms.
Since I sit up here and beat you guys up all the time, I thought it's important to just note that the foresight that you guys put into this, for the fact that you got that piece of property knowing that we were going to have an opportunity to build that, I think is it just says a lot about you guys and your staff in looking forward to that, and knowing now that Reno's probably going to end up with somebody's going to end up with a really good facility that we, at the end of the day, we don't have to pay, in theory, the money that we would pay to demo it, we can now pay to revitalize it a bit and still have a great use. So good job.
Okay, next slide. The next school that's on here is a Reed High School modernization. So this is an aerial picture of Reed shortly after it was built in 1974. So as you can see, Sparks Boulevard is nowhere on there. Only Bering Boulevard is there to actually orient you a little bit. So I think that was it was out in the paper a little while ago and we were kind of chuckling about it, so had to include it. We actually started working at McQueen High School due to some of the the mobiles that they had, and that with a modernization or a schematic design. Robert McQueen High School is a sister school to Edward C. Reed. There's a lot of translation to that, so we're going to start with Reed with this one. It is a little older, and we have collaborative design doing that initially beforehand. So, you know, we think about these things before we actually get to the modernization plan. We think about what could be, and so this is a great transition into that modernization at Reed. Next slide.
Mr. Solero, if I might, I apologize to my colleagues on the board. I have a hard stop for myself, and so I'm going to dip out. But because you mentioned McQueen High School, and before I leave, you know, my heart is always with our Lancers, as I'm a proud graduate and 3 children who graduate from there. I, of course, understand why Reed would be the first one, because it is older, it has seen more years, and ultimately all of the modernization work that you all have done over the last year has been tremendous. And the consultants who were hired to help us get to this point have really paved a path for our future success. I'd like to see McQueen, of course, make its way, and I know that you'll get to that point, but because I won't be here for the remainder of the meeting, I'll just say thank you for putting the schools in order and trying to work through them systematically. I know that ultimately all of the schools are going to get some touches, and all the students and parents at each school will be so proud of the work that the district has done and is doing. I know McQueen's pretty worse for the wear. I've been volunteering up there a few nights a week with their We the People program, with their debate program, catching a few soccer and basketball games, and it needs a little love. So thanks for that.
So this request is for a design budget of $12.5 million. It still has the same elements in that scope as we had for STED. Because of the unknown, that we have mobiles out there that we would like to remove. And in order to remove that, we may need to add additional classrooms. We're working with education right now, the academic side, to prioritize the educational specifications, because we are going to be using that budget and those prioritizations to work through. This would be a CMAR delivery, just because it's going to be an active campus. High schools don't close long enough to get a ton of work done, so we're going to need that CMAR with their logistic planning to help us get through that, their liaison with the principals and the site staff. So this would be replicated, these ideas and these things would be replicated to McQueen and Galena, because they are the same type of schools. So we're going to learn from this one, is the idea, and then replicate that in the other ones. There may be small differences, but it'll give us an idea of what challenges we may face.
Is this going to help alleviate any potential overcrowding at Spanish Springs High School? I think Spanish Springs area is exploding. There's a problem with the middle school out there, already well over capacity, that we just built a few years ago. So I think as we look at this project, we need to make sure that we're also helping some of the overcrowding in the neighboring schools.
So currently, Spanish Springs High School is not overcrowded. We took a lot of those students in the back of Sun Valley and moved them into Hug High School, New Proctor Hug, and so we alleviated that. We did a rezoning for a lot of those schools out there. We did the middle schools and Bohatch this last fall, so we have moved those students around starting next year to alleviate that. We will always we look at the projections and what they might come with, and how we might alleviate those overcrowding if that is a concern.
So my understanding with the variances out there is that students who got rezoned could still go to Spanish Springs or to Sky Ranch. Is that accurate? Because so my kids are both at those schools, and we're being directly told by the principal that even the rezoning is still going to cause we're still over numbers than other schools in the area.
So there are items in the zoning process and zoning regulations, right? If you are attending there and you get rezoned, you have the ability to go there, but you can't. And then our open variance policy, right? But up to a certain capacity. So there may be some initially, just because of students going there and then being rezoned and then coming back because they have the ability to do that. But when they leave, then they won't be able to, it will work its way out. But again, we work through projections, we will work with our demographer, we will work with the school sites, and if need be, you know, as we have six mobiles at Reed High School, that's 12 classrooms, we'll work to create those classrooms, and that's one of the biggest things that we will be doing with the facility modernization is getting rid of those mobiles. And I wish that committee member Dis was here to say that he could hear me say that. So with that, this, as I said, it'll be a CMAR delivery method, and we'll start design, hopefully be back to you guys within a year, and start construction possibly in summer of 2025. Next slide. Matthews Elementary School. Bernice Matthews was built in 1997. They are what we term them as a pinwheel school. That is over there by Paradise Park. Next slide. We have worked with Van Wert Bugatti on some conceptual designs. They are the original architect of record for these pinwheels. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we're going to work with an architect that is in our RFQ pool, has already worked on some studies. Even before the modernization, we had them doing some work to see what the possibilities were, knowing that this might be coming down the pipe. Next slide. This is Canon Designs conceptual. We will mash all of these up with Van Wert Bugatti and work through that design process with them. Next slide. So design budget request is 1.3 million, same services as we had before. We have worked with the education side to prioritize the educational specifications again. It will be a CMAR delivery method for this one. It will be an active campus. We will be doing things at night, and we'll need that logistics planning for it. We're intending for this to be replicated at the next phase of Pinwheels Elementary Schools, which you can see up there are 5 of them. We may decide to package them in a group together to get economy of scale. It helps with budgets. It helps to be financially and fiscally responsible with that if we can package them. We usually save some dollars for that. But Matthews, you can see on the slide, it's in close proximity to Kate Smith, Risley, and Sparks Middle School up there. So it's in a good place. We may talk about projections as well and what we may need to take from the other schools in order to even those sizes out. Next slide. Oh, sorry.
So, question on Matthews, because I'm like, that's like a new school. Then I looked at the date, and time goes pretty quick. But relative to even the other Pinwheel schools you're listing here, is the issue at Matthews, or why you did the decision to go with them first on this design request, is it overcrowding? Is it some of the educational needs or things you want to add, a STEAM lab or things that aren't there? Because I'm looking, these other schools are a lot older, so it wasn't necessarily by age. Is it a lot of factors, I'm sure?
A lot of factors go into that. They have a Head Start program there. They have some pre-K out in a mobile that we'd like to move in. The location is a little challenging because it's next to a park. What do we need to do security-wise to help with that? Just those are the things that we think about with this. And it's prioritized on the Canon design plan as the first one out of the gate. So with that, they could have some issues with their facility condition index that creates something that needs to be fixed over there as well. So we looked at all of those, and that's part of that prioritization with that. You know, it may be newer. It's had traditionally more students in it than a lot of them too. It could have gone back to the year-round schools and all of that. So we take a lot of that into consideration when we determine which one's first.
Okay, they've never been year-round, correct?
I don't believe
Matthews?
so.
And what is student population?
Well, just the quantity of students there, right? Percentage used of that school.
Right, but I'm just wondering what enrollment at Matthews is.
You know, I want to say, and I didn't bring it with me, and I probably should have. I don't know off the top of my head, but I could send it to you.
Okay, we're looking at 700, 800.
No, it's under that. I want to say it's somewhere in the 500s.
Okay, because it's similar design to Bud Beasley, where my kids went.
Correct.
And I think they were 8, maybe. Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So Palmer Elementary is, Virginia Palmer was built in 1981. It's out in the back of Sun Valley. Next slide. So through Canon Designs, they have started to mash up some of these schematics and what it would look like. We will be working with an architect that has some familiarity with these projects out there. They've done a lot of the rooftop units. a lot of the bathroom sinks and the classroom sinks and that. So this could be part of what it looks like, but it would translate to Diedrichson, Gomes, Lenz, Palmer, and Whitehead as well, because they are all the same, what we call the pod schools, built in the 80s. Next slide. So Palmer Elementary, you can see Desert Skies up there with the yellow star. Palmer's in the back of Sun Valley, but on the eastern side, and Bennett is across the valley from them. This is a $1.5 million budget request for design services. It has the same type of scope as those others previously. Prioritization of educational specifications would go through this. We're looking for equity. We're looking to put some of the same things in at each of those schools, and working with education to do that. They have a couple mobiles there that we would love to put them under a single roof to create that school culture. This would be a CMAR delivery on an active campus as well, and as I said, they would be replicated for those schools. Next slide. So those are kind of the shovel-ready projects. Now we get into projects that need a little bit more investigation, and we're going to call them conceptual studies. The dollar amounts are a little bit smaller, and Loader Elementary School is one of them that it's in the facility modernization plan for a rebuild. And Worcester is in there for a rebuild on site as well. So these are all rebuilds on the existing sites. It was built in 1957, in case you were wondering. Next slide. So this is kind of our conceptual, really high level. We have a soccer field to the east of the property that we would flip. We put a new building on there. We would take where the existing building is and repurpose that as parking and playground area. So we are looking to really get into, this is just block diagrams that we've started thinking about in the size of schools. We really want to investigate that with some architects and engineers for the actual footprint of the building. Parking codes have changed significantly since this was built. Site circulation, we like to keep the buses separate from the parents, and we want to see how that works. So we're looking for some design phase budget for this to look at that. Next slide. We're looking at $200,000. Options for building, as I said, parking, and we would be utilizing the current prototype elementary school. This also, with that, allows the repurposing of Corbett Elementary School. I want to kind of emphasize that as we go through these, projects like this would go through zoning, naming, and the school closure process that we have. So there's a lot of pieces that'll come once we look at repurposing Corbett, just like Stead Elementary. So next steps, would like to come back in FY25 for full design funding from this committee and then to the board. And then after that, we'd go to zoning advisory because we'd have to mix up the students between Corbett, Loader, Veterans, Booth, and see how that zoning worked out. But because as you can see on the map, they're all pretty close to each other. Next slide. Worcester rebuild on site, built in 1962. So on the left-hand side, you have the aerial of the existing Worcester, what it looks like, what fields they have. And on the right-hand side, you can see our ed spec of what the high school fields and grounds should look like in a new high school. So they have a quadplex of baseball, softball fields. They have multiple practice fields. They have a lot more parking. So with this, we're looking to do the same conceptual like we are doing at Loader with parking, where the building goes, making sure all of those fields fit. If we have issues, we can discuss those and work through them. Site circulation, there's Plum Lane on one side. We've got the freeway on another side. We've got a residential neighborhood on one side. We have a motel on the other side and the postal service. So we really want to investigate what that looks like for utilities, what entrances look like, and that. So next slide. The conceptual study budget request is $1 million. Those are all of the items I previously talked about it for the services that we're looking at. We will be utilizing the current Proctor HUG prototype. And then the next steps would be full funding design in 2026 FY '26. It's going to take us a little bit to get through a lot of these and decide and see how this all fits on this piece of property.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I got excited. On the conceptual site plan, is this a golf course we're gonna put at Hug High? On the side of it, is that,
Is that included in a high school? No, it's not. That's the conceptual for Proctor Hug when we were actually
gotcha.
working
Oh,
on
when you were
that
doing
site.
it, I'm
So,
like,
yeah.
gotcha.
Actually-
I'm like, whoa, I just got like really, I'm like, that would be a great location. Anyway,
Golf is taught in PD, and it is part of their athletic curriculum, right? But, I
I-
mean,
Just up the street, Washoe Golf. Come on.
okay. So for these all totaled together, we're looking at a $20 million design funding budget allocation. Okay.
Are there any additional questions for Ms. Zimmerman on this package? All right, not seeing any. Thank you very much. That'll take us on to item 2.05, presentation, discussion, and possible action to recommend approval of the Board of Trustees budget allocations for the Major Projects Program 2324A in the total amount of $190,500,000. Since this is an action item, I think I'll go ahead and take public comment first before we jump into that. So we do public comment.
Jeff Church? Pablo Navaduran?
I got a lot of questions about this agenda, so I'm going to talk about each first. Yes, I do support of State Middle School rebuild because the older campus is on a state highway, similar to old O'Brien was. And then we moving to the neighborhood, more neighborhood type. That could be great location. So I feel like for the old State Middle School, I think that we should build a community center because No Valley doesn't, the only ward that doesn't have no community centers. So I like this one. And better, yeah, you build like a new Boys and Girl Club over there where the old State Elementary School is. So for Reed High School, since you got the like 6 classroom on the back over there, if a Spanish grade was overcrowded, maybe why not build like maybe a part of 6 building? You know, I read a A5P survey. They say, let's replace this this module classroom into a permanent building. Let's add a permanent building. And so here we go. So Reed High School modernization, great. But how about the field, athletic field, baseball, softball field? What's the guy gonna do for Reed High School? And then for next one to Matthew Elementary School. So yes, I do support the Matthew Elementary School modernization, but doesn't make sense to close it down, repurpose or rebuild Matthew Elementary School because they're a newer school, the newest school in this old Spark area. And then hopefully, like, I got a question for Tammy. So if a Matthew Elementary School were modernized, there's a likely chance to take the Case Smith out of Case Smith Elementary School and repurpose Case Smith, or Weasley Elementary School, Karen, or Mitchell Elementary School. I don't know. So, and then for Palmer, I do support, no comments. And then for Lauder, yes, I do support rebuild Lauder Elementary School, and then come out with Corbett, not all of it can go Corbett because some of them were close to Booth or Veteran, or maybe some area of Hidden County might want to rezone to Hidden Valley. That makes sense. So, and then for Wooster rebuild, if a Wooster rebuild is going to be rebuilt on the practice field, where the Wooster Athletics go on our campus. So, and then for Vaughn Middle School, for the new Vaughn Middle School, when they open play by 2027, Are you planning to add a new bleacher, like new temporary football field for Worcester at the Vaughn Middle School? That's my question, so here we go.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, sounds good. Mrs. Zimmerman, you want to run us through this really briefly?
So you'll see on here in the green, there's what we're asking for today for 125 million budget construction funding phase for Vaughn Middle School. Stead Elementary School is a 3.5 million design funding phase. 200,000 conceptual study for Loader. Worcester rebuild is the 1 million conceptual study funding for that. Reed High School modernization, we're asking for 12.5 million for design funding phase. 1.3 for Matthews modernization, 1.5 for the design funding phase of Palmer, and then finally the central transportation yard of 45.5 million currently, and that totals what we have at the bottom and what we're asking for in total, if I can see it. There it goes, $190.5 million today.
Are there any questions for Tammy on this item? Yeah, go ahead.
So in that 190, almost all of this is our projection. We don't really have any hard numbers on any of this yet. Am I correct with that, or is there some? I guess what I'm saying is, are any of this 190, is any of it subject to come back and ask for more if we didn't have enough in the budget?
So in those budget requests for each construction and design, we have contingency in there so that we have enough for those projects.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? I am open to a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Bunkowski, a second by Anderson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. That'll take us on to item 3.01, public comment. Is there any public comment for this item?
Jeff Church.
Good evening, folks. I'll be brief. Jeff Church, trustee for the Washoe County School District. Views expressed here are mine, do not represent the district. Number one, I just wanted to come, I happen to be in the area, and say thank you very much for all you do. Great meeting today. You asked some hard questions, and I really seriously appreciate it. I am going to take back to my trustees that you're voting for a golf course at Worcester High School, so I'll pass that on. Nothing really to talk about, except sooner or later you're going to be dealing with the issue of Incline Village Middle School. That's my district. If and when that comes up, I just want to express my support for maintaining that open unless there's major reasons to close it. And if we're going to do any of that, we should have a local Incline Village group help study the issue, not some unwieldy larger group. And then near and dear to my heart, just to put it on the record, is the building we're in, quite old. Just really love to see a new admin building down the road. This building, UNR wants it, a lot of other people want it, and I'd love to give it to them and go elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Pablo Navaduran.
Regarding of a project, so Reed High School modernization sound great. So if we added 6 classroom to leave for Spanish Spring, and then possibly I see the Spark High School student a woman declining so much. If we're back to 10 years later, it's about, so the Spark Middle School women for 10 years for now, it's about less than 1,000 students. So I feel like it makes sense to Spark to close it down, Spark High School, and repurpose and then make it at a new administrative building for Washoe County School District as a district home over there. So it's not central located, but this could be a better situation. And also, I'm very excited to see Wooster High School getting a brand new school. So I'm grateful for this community as well. We saw the Huck High School was a built a new high school on a Wild Creek golf course, expanding of 22,000, and rezoning from Sun Valley out of Spanish Green to leave overcrowded Spanish Green. And then, so if it do that, so the Wooster, say they look like about the same as Huck High School, but the woman is gonna be like 21 and 22,000 students, so 2,200 students. That's gonna be great for papers. So I feel like we could possibly could be a zoning facet community. If possibly if Reno, Galena, or Damani was overcrowded, we could take the area to rezone it to a new Wooster High School. It's like, for example, my neighborhood occurrence for Damani that could have space to have a new Wooster High School, a new Wooster High School, newly rebuilt new Wooster High School. That gonna be a lot closer to them. I'm very excited to see, and hopefully this area could deserve to have more, deserve to go on new school. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There's no more public comment.
All right, thank you very much. With that, our next meeting will be April 11th, 2024, 4 o'clock in this room. And then with that, we will go ahead and call this meeting adjourned.